From both within and without, the Chaos Gods and their various servants plot and fight to ensure the downfall of the Imperium and humanity. Many of these servants form the ranks of the demonic legions or the Heretic Astartes, but the vast majority, at least in the realm of mortals, come from more humble roots. Whether drawn from the citizenry of the Imperium or from within its vast military and bureaucratic machines, these hordes of humans are often uncoordinated and diverse, but can be extremely dangerous. Their constituent components are known by many names, but the combined moniker for these mortal servants is simple: the Lost and the Damned. Today, we explore the Lost and the Damned, looking at the various groups that form it and how it comes to bring war to the Imperium that often it once served. This is Tactica Imperialis, and welcome to 40k Stories. Defining what exactly the Lost and the Damned are is a little difficult, but it's broadly summarised as non-Astartes mortals who serve the Ruinous Powers. That's not to say an aspiring champion from a Chaos Space Marine warband can't lead a force of Lost and the Damned, or that a Dark Apostle will not be the one to rally them to war, but as a rule of thumb, Astartes' involvement is minimal, perhaps a commander or two at most. As for demons, whilst they can be summoned if a force includes psychers, or even lead them from the shadows or the front, it's not the vast demonic hosts that characterise the Lost and the Damned. The Dark Mechanicum also stands somewhat apart from them, though I suspect many of their slaves and menials would actually qualify if they weren't, serving under a heretic. Typical Lost and the Damned hordes will actually be drawn not from those within the Imperium, though we will absolutely address those groups later in this log. Instead, the populace of demon worlds, the mutants and thralls of the Ruinous Powers, will be the heart of many forces. They're numerous in the extreme, very easy to recruit, and often are somewhat battle-ready due to the constant warring between the Chaos Gods over said worlds. However, these deranged hordes are somewhat lacking in order, and will require the guidance or leadership of a champion to guide them to war. Said champion can be an Astartes, as mentioned previously, or perhaps some sort of arch-heretic with enough command or charisma or faith. As you might expect for the inhabitants of demon worlds, there is a lot of mutation and variance within the forces of the demon worlds. Genetic mutation is rampant across them, both random quirks and the corrupting influences of chaos twisting them sometimes beyond even recognition as human. Abhumans, most notably the massively varied and savage beastmen, also find themselves within the ranks of the Lost and the Damned extremely often, some of which may be aligned to a particular god like the Zangors, which are dedicated to Tzeentch, or the Pestigors of Nurgle. Psychic and sorcerous power is unsurprisingly widespread. This is chaos after all. And without the safety and regulation of the Imperium, these powers can be pretty deadly, but also unpredictable. That unpredictability also lends the Lost and the Damned an extra advantage, as we also mentioned before: demons. Whether through ritual, summoning, or just power gone haywire, demonic entities will often find their way into real space to wreak havoc with either possession or a straight-up manifestation in the material realm. It might not be quite the nightmare that fighting a full demonic invasion is, nor is it the structured carnage or unstoppable rampage of the Heretic Astartes, but this hybrid of everything combined with near endless numbers make the Lost and the Damned incredibly dangerous in and of themselves. Unlike the other forces of chaos, and especially of other factions and races, there is no hierarchy or advanced structure in the Lost and the Damned. Everything is somewhat ragtag, with the force being whatever a given champion can pull to their banner at any given moment. However, there is still some military organisation within the heart of many Lost and the Damned forces. These are known simply as the Traitor Guard, which, given the name, is exactly what you think it is. These are the elements of the Astra Militarum who have defected from the Imperial war machine, having either lost their faith in the Emperor or perhaps simply been dragged along by those higher up the command chain who were seduced by chaos. I doubt any of the Traitor Guard can be duped into thinking they aren't serving chaos for long, and they will actually become traitors pretty quickly, but their presence is immeasurably valuable to the Lost and the Damned champions. A corps of actually trained soldiers with actual war gear brings the more elite elements for carrying out dangerous tasks or holding a key objective, and that's just the basic infantry equivalent to an Imperial Guardsman. Sometimes platoons, companies, even entire regiments can turn traitor, and that brings not only a lot of bodies and guns, but potentially brings some more high-tech weaponry and armor into the mix. Just like when a Gene Stealer cult infiltrates the Astra Militarum and seizes tanks and the like for its own cause, the Traitor Guard can broadly do the same, and if they do it by turning on their fellows on campaign, they can make off with or take control of a hell of a lot more stuff. It's these forces that can take the Lost and the Damned from dangerous to terrifying. A strategically placed sergeant or a squad, artillery and tanks in some cases, even super heavies, and maybe if the Mechanicum get involved, Titans, that really messes things up and adds a lot of discipline on both attack and defense. So can a city or a world be toppled from without by the power of humanity and chaos, drowned in a tide of madness and maniacal laughter with more than a little bit of punch to back it up. However, it is not just from without that the Imperium is assailed. As often as not, the true and greater threat lies within. The Lost and the Damned are probably best known for the Traitor Guard and the mutant hordes, but their hidden or otherwise unrecognized aspects located in Imperial society make them far more dangerous. They are again incredibly diverse, as would be expected given they lie within the Imperium, and they are broadly categorized as chaos cults, and they are everywhere. Sometimes it will be something insidious and shadowy, especially on the more civilized worlds with an aristocracy or a menial workforce. Whether through the lure of secret societies with dark traditions and twisted agendas, or through hidden unions seeking to revolt against their masters, chaos can so easily take root within an imperial world and begin to corrupt its populace either from the top down or the ground up. If a world is rife with mutation, I suspect this corruption might rise more easily, though likely that is due to the oppression and exclusion of the Imperium as opposed to a natural susceptibility like the Imperium would have you believe. More feral or backward worlds are just as vulnerable to chaos, though in a different way. Bloodletting warrior cults, shamanistic orders, all sorts of things can get at them. However, these worlds that are less directly under the yoke of imperial bureaucracy don't necessarily require the secrecy of the civilized worlds. Sure, screaming about blood for the blood god will still get you killed if the wrong people hear it, but old traditions are certainly harder to watch and stamp out when authority has far less grip on a planet. Perhaps, as on ancient Colchis or Cadia, the pantheon of deities worshipped by the populace of yesteryear will actually be the Chaos Gods, even if said populace is unaware of that fact. Even when the Imperium and the Ecclesiarchy stamp their own authority on the world, these ancient traditions prove very stubborn and never fully die out, laying the foundations for a chaos cult to rise. Once established, the general rule for a cult is to avoid detection, since the Arbites and or the Inquisition will come down like a hammer if they're found. However, that doesn't mean that cults don't publicly operate. In fact, it's very common that they do, using legitimacy as a front to keep their dark side hidden. These can be entirely innocuous like charities, or something more ambitious like a political group with extreme views, or if they're feeling particularly daring, a religious group that may or may not practice a local and accepted variant of the imperial creed. Whatever the front or the modus operandi, the end goal of a chaos cult is usually the same. Stay hidden, grow, take over the city or world by whatever means are necessary or appropriate, rinse, repeat, rule. This might be through political means, winning over enough people in high places to gain dominance and influence the world to their will without going public. Obviously, coercing a planetary governor and or their direct subordinates is not easy in many cases, but chaos is eternal and a skilled cult is patient and devious enough to make it happen. Worst case, get them assassinated and plant in a puppet. Those outside of politics could use religion as the basis for controlling the wider populace, though this one requires perhaps even more care, as the Ministorum will be watching along with the Adeptus Arbites who enforce the law of every world of the Imperium. and if the cult ever gets too noisy in its deviance, there exists the risk of the Ordo Hereticus coming to visit, as the Inquisition is ever vigilant for the threat of chaos, and none in the Imperium have the authority to deny them for a split second. However, for the majority of chaos cults, things pretty much end up one way: violence. Sometimes the cult decides they are powerful enough to seize their world, city, sector by force. Other times the long arm of the law catches up to them and they become massively exposed. At that point, the cult will likely have nowhere to run and everything to lose or gain, and bloody war can erupt on 100 fronts as the cult rises up from hiding to attempt to take control. However, they often don't have to do it alone. Some cults have an Astartes or daemonic influence hidden deep in the background or the warp, and allies from the Immaterium can often join the uprising to claim the world for their own uses. Others will have sorcerously gifted members of their own who can bind the Neverborn or simply rip open a warp portal and let them through. With a demonic host or even a force of Heretic Astartes aiding or coordinating, a cult becomes far more dangerous and will likely require off-world Imperial response to put their rebellion down or deliver a punitive reprisal if they arrive too late. The nature and influence of any reinforcement will in turn likely affect the fate of a cult should it not be wiped out by the Imperium. If a large amount of demons arrive and the warp waxes strongly enough, the world may be transformed into a new demon world. At that point, many cultists will likely be absorbed into a force similar to the Lost and the Damned as discussed before. Different Astartes forces will have different plans. The Iron Warriors likely would turn the cults into slaves for their forges, the Alpha Legion might then absorb them into their armies as agents to sow wider rebellion, whilst warbands of Khorne might just take their heads as an offering to the Blood God because Khorne. In almost any event, being rewarded for success or being allowed to rest on their laurels is not something a cultist can expect. But such is the way of chaos. The head of the cult may receive some minor reward from a patron deity if they have one, but nothing will go to those underlings who've made it through. Best case scenario for every Tom, Dick or Harry in a cult, the cult takes the world either through political maneuvers or an uprising done under its own steam with no help, and the new leader rewards those involved with command or other ranking positions, forming a new government, military and the like, and hoping the Imperium doesn't come back. Sure, there'd be usurpers and a heck of a lot of political scheming, but that is also the way of chaos, and I doubt that the order of the Imperial authorities they've just overthrown is what the cultists would want anyway. After all, why throw out one system to replace it with a new one that basically does the same thing, but then comes with a lot more murder on the side? Just bad idea. To finish off this little foray, let's have a look at a few famous elements of the Lost and the Damned. Notable cults, renowned Traitor Guard regiments and the like. One of the biggest and best known cults was known as the Blood Pact, a Khorne-aligned cult that probably went somewhat against the grain for the majority of those who served the Blood God. Believed active for up to 3,000 years in the region known as the Sabbat World in Segmentum Pacificus, the Blood Pact was a massive and heavily militaristic organisation that relied on prowess and discipline as opposed to mindless slaughter. They first came to the attention of the Imperial authorities partway through the crusade by the Imperium to retake the Sabbat Worlds in 765 and 41, which makes me assume that the Imperium really wasn't paying attention, or their world of origin somehow slipped from Imperial rule long ago. Either way, the Blood Pact became the core of the Chaos Forces in the Sabbat Crusade as its leader took power after the previous commander, known as the Archon, died against the Imperial War Master Slado, who was also slain. The cultists were easily beyond the level of an average guardsman, and though the supposed reincarnation of Saint Sabbat herself may have ultimately cost them the war or at least put them on the back foot, they show just how dangerous a Chaos cult can become if left unchecked and in the right hands. On the other hand, one of the subtler yet still incredibly dangerous cults operates out of the Calixis sector of Segmentum Obscurus. This is the Brotherhood of Horned Darkness, a cult with so many connections and agents it has survived despite exposure and purging by the Inquisition. Servants of a demon believed to be a demon prince of chaos undivided, the Brotherhood is one of those cults that preys on the rich and uses lust for power as a primary draw. It has almost collapsed and corrupted the entire sector through its machinations in the past, and despite attacks by the Inquisition, it is so well entrenched in the upper echelons that it still remains dangerously powerful today. However, domination is not the goal. Rather, being the hidden puppet master is the intended aim for the Brotherhood, and so masking activity and enforcing silence has allowed them to endure and thrive despite their roadblocks. Both the Blood Pact and the Brotherhood are modern cults, but perhaps the most infamous of them all is an ancient one, the daemonic Serpent Lodge. This cult existed in the days before many were truly aware of chaos as an entity, and the military skill of the Serpent Lodge actually saw them win some renown with some of the Legiones Astartes. The warrior lodges that would later be secretly instituted in the legions were said to be based on the Serpent Lodge, tools of the word bearers to turn as many possible to the traitor cause when the time came. Said time was when the Primarch Horus Lupercal was mortally wounded on his return to Davin, with Erebus convincing the War Masters Morneval to entrust his body to the Lodge's cultists in order to heal him. The sorcerous power of the chamber he lay in, powered by rituals of the cultists themselves, allowed Erebus to infiltrate Horus's dreams, eventually turning him to the service of the Chaos Gods, who healed him of his wounds and properly set the Horus heresy into motion. On the Traitor Guard side, a rather infamous modern regiment is the Visconti Cataphracts, who made their presence known in the 13th Black Crusade. As the regiments of the Astra Militarum mustered on Cadia to prepare for the coming of Abaddon the Despoiler's armies, the Visconti suddenly revealed their turncoat nature and massacred the command staff of the Cadians, and even took out the governor himself as they gathered on the Tyrock fields to meet the new arrivals. Given the Cataphracts had actually won some renown amongst those in the sector, this betrayal came entirely out of the blue, and the hardened Visconti and their super heavy tanks went on a tear through the Tyrock fields over several hours. Only the intervention of the future Castellan Osaka Creed was able to stabilize the situation, and rather than retreat, the Visconti Cataphracts fought to the death. In the Horus Heresy era, the Traitor Guard were primarily formed, I suspect, from those of the Imperialis Auxilia who served under or hailed from worlds belonging to the Traitor Legions. The two main examples I want to address are the Roaring Blades, formerly known as the Righteous Blades in their pre-Chaos days, and the Prospero Spire Guard. The former, perhaps unsurprisingly given the name, were vassals to the Third Legion, the perfectionists and renowned swordsmen of the Emperor's Children. One of the most decorated infantry groups in the entire Great Crusade, the Righteous Blades sadly seemingly stayed with the Emperor's Children and followed their liege Fulgrim in corruption and fell under the sway of Slanesh. Now under the name of the Roaring Blades, since I suspect that righteousness died pretty quickly, the Traitor Guard seem to have stayed with their legion to some extent, becoming close combat specialists who revel in even the most horrific injuries and can find strength from pain until finally dropping dead. The latter, the Spire Guard, were of course assigned to the Thousand Sons Legion, though I cannot find definitive evidence that their regiments were entirely or partially drawn from the 15th home of Prospero, as the name would imply. They saw action in the Great Crusade on worlds such as Arcreach Secundus, as well as inevitably helping to defend Prospero when it was burned by the Space Wolves at the dawn of the Horus Heresy. Some Spire Guard did survive the scouring of their world, however, presumably escaping with the few thousand sons who managed to get away from the Sons of Russ. They joined the 15th in their fall, though it's unknown whether Tzeentch or Magnus gave them any blessing or boon, and the Spire Guard were last seen to my knowledge the time before last that Magnus besieged Fenris. You know, the one in M32, not M41. And there you have it, a look into the operations and structures within the Lost and the Damned. Though they are amongst the lowest ranked of the servants of chaos, the power of the Traitor Guard, Chaos cults, and the wider Lost and the Damned cannot be underestimated. They are a threat that can strike from within and without, toppling authorities and even bringing the power of the warp to engulf the worlds they once fought for or called home. Now, it is time we move on to the next member of the Champions of Humanity for our mini-series. Next time, I actually wish to look at another pair of champions, simply because their tales become so intertwined later in M41. They come from very different roots, different chapters even, but they have fought many a campaign together and are both renowned within their own ranks and more widely. For now though, thank you for watching Tactica Imperialis, and I'll see you all again. Goodbye.